Hey everyone, welcome to the Nerd Herder Show. I'm Rich.
I'm Nick.
And this is the Over a Beer channel, and this is episode 6 of Nerd Herders, Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Nerd Herders.
What are we going to do for episode 8? We don't know the name yet.
Episode 7. Oh yeah, episode 7.
We know the name of that.
It's true, we can still call it episode 8.
Yeah. Well.
Anyway,
hey.
Like every week, we are doing this over a beer. Today we are drinking Two Brothers Revelry Imperial Red Ale.
Mm.
This is from Warnerville, Illinois.
9.5 ABV.
Oh, this should be fun. 9.5%. Cheers. I like that a lot.
That's a red ale.
That's
really
good.
Right there. Good job,
really
Illinois.
good. Yeah.
Warrenville.
Good job, Two Brothers.
Wonder who they are. The Russo brothers?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Anyway, let's get into the first segment of the show. News. Nick, you have our top 5 news stories of the week.
Top 5 news stories of the week. So, again, if you haven't caught on, each week we do a top 5 news, and Rich and I switch off who chooses the stories. You don't know the stories I'm going to choose.
Not.
Hopefully you do know about them, though, so we can have a conversation. All right, first story of the week. Frank Marshall, famed producer of such movies as the Indiana Jones movies, had an interview this week, and he talked about the future of the Indiana Jones franchise. Something we talked about recently.
Yeah, I think it was last week.
He didn't say straight up that there won't be an Indiana Jones 5 with Harrison Ford, which is what we talked about. But what he did say is the inevitability of there being Indiana Jones movies without Harrison Ford and what their approach will be. And that is, they will not recast the character with a new actor. They're not going to do the James Bond thing, is what he said. So what he means is there will be Indiana Jones movies without Indiana Jones.
Which at that point, why
What is it?
Yeah.
So then you have to think that they're going to try really hard once again, like they did in Crystal Skull, where they tried to introduce Mutt Williams, the Shia LaBeouf character, to take over the franchise. That didn't work. There's no way that they're letting Shia LaBeouf take the helm.
No, there will not be a Mutt Williams movie.
So I would assume we're going to get another movie. They're going to try and hit it out of the park with another character. Whether or not that's his son again or whatever it is, who knows?
Or maybe he might have a lot of sons. You know,
maybe they'll recast Mutt Williams.
I could be up for that.
Whatever it is, we'll find out. But still, it begs the question: why do we need Indiana Jones movies without Indiana Jones?
Yeah, that's kind of the bigger problem here. I'm all for more Indiana Jones films, but it doesn't make sense to call it Indiana Jones or make it part of the franchise if it doesn't actually have Indiana Jones. Obviously, there was always going to be a time if these movies continued that Harrison Ford would not be able to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't see a problem having another actor step into the role, but
I don't.
If they're going to switch it over, they need to create a character that we're really going to care about with an actor who... I mean, maybe Chris Pratt will come in. Maybe he's... Well, I'm not going to be Indiana Jones, but I could be... You know, I don't know, his long-lost cousin.
Illinois Smith.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you know, I'm like you. I don't mind. We had this conversation before. I don't mind if they recast Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford is always going to be that character, but that doesn't mean that somebody else can't. We're going to get a new Han Solo. We know that.
Yeah.
We don't know who's playing him yet.
Well, I mean, it's the same with Bond. Like, Bond, to still a lot of people, is still... Sean Connery.
Yeah, he's always going to be Sean Connery.
But you're okay with, Brosnan, right? Whoever comes in.
Yeah. Sometimes is better than others, and we'll talk a lot about Bond next week. But, I don't know. Interesting take, though. And, while Frank Marshall does produce these movies, I don't think that his word is permanent.
Yeah, I'm sure if Spielberg came in and said, we're going to do this instead, they would probably...
The other thing to note about Frank Marshall is his wife is Kathleen Kennedy, who is now the head of Lucasfilm at Disney. So he's and Lucasfilm does Indiana Jones as well as Star Wars. So he's going to be in the say for a while, but I also don't necessarily think that if Disney goes, it makes no sense they're going to have the final say. They own it.
Sure.
All right, second story. Moving on. Hopefully you heard about this one.
Okay.
Edgar Wright. We learned a little bit about his next movie, Baby Driver. I believe is what it's called. John Hamm joined the cast of that. We already know that the Anton Elgort or whatever, the kid from Fault in Our Stars, is going to be the lead of that. But we learned about his next movie after that this week.
I had heard something about him having an announcement. I didn't see what it was though.
So Edgar Wright has teamed with Johnny Depp to star in an adaptation of Fortunately the Milk, which is a short story that was written by Neil Gaiman, who did Coraline. He did Stardust. He's done a few books that were turned into things. American Gods. Great book, is being turned into a series, I think, for Showtime now. So this, I've never read Fortunately the Milk. Are you familiar with it
No,
at
I'm
all?
not.
Okay. So I read the Wikipedia description of the book. And it is about, it's like a kid's book.
Okay.
And it's about a father goes out to get some milk, and it takes him a while, and when he comes back the kids are like, what took so long? And he tells this extravagant story that includes dinosaurs, vampires, aliens, all these things about why it took him so long to get the milk. That's all. I didn't want to read more of it in case there's like some other thing, but I know that it includes at least those things, some other things.
That sounds right up Edgar Wright's alley. And
totally. Yeah.
I would be on board for 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be a really interesting. Do you remember a few years ago Adam Sandler had that movie Bedtime Stories?
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty lame, but it was a neat concept. Like the stories he tells his kids start coming to life. This sounds kind of like that type of a deal.
Yeah.
I could see Edgar Wright doing great things, and we just recently saw Johnny Depp be pretty freaking awesome in Black Mass, a movie that overall I thought was just fine.
Yeah.
Not great, but he
his
was awesome
performance
in that.
is
So
terrific. And I'd like to see him do something that sounds a little more over the top with a director that's not Burton. And this could be another shot of his to be like, hey, look, I can do over the top without too much, that kind of...
Yeah. So Johnny Depp is, he's got a new Pirates of the Caribbean film in the can, going to come out, I think, next year or something. So he's going to have some clout again that's going to make $1 billion. They all do. And so this might be the first time that we truly get to see Edgar Wright have a budget of significant size, maybe. This sounds ambitious, just reading the descriptions. It's going to be really cool to see him, and I think that's kind of, at least why I was upset that he didn't get to do Ant-Man. Edgar Wright, he was originally supposed to, for those who don't know. Again, Edgar Wright, if you don't know, he's the guy who made Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim, Hot Fuzz, World's End, and did the show Spaced, among other things. But I was excited for him to do Ant-Man just because this is a guy, a visionary, who has never had money to make a movie, really. And so this might be that first opportunity.
He's also someone I've never seen. He's not, as far as I'm concerned, he's never had a bad film.
Yeah, I'm a little bit iffy on World's End myself.
Okay.
But super excited, can't wait. And his next movie also, know very little about it, but I mentioned it, Baby Driver. I know that it's a car chase musical of some sort. So
all right, I'm on board.
Could be interesting. All right, next story. Actually, for this one, I know this is something that you wanted to talk about a bit.
Okay.
So you're going to kind of run it. But
oh boy.
Sony just had a big to-do in Paris.
They did.
Was there anything notable that we should discuss?
They just had their Paris games. I wrote some of this down. I was watching the conference kind of before we kicked this off. So I didn't get the last half hour, so I'm a little spotty on some of it. Some of the big things that I have seen, No Man's Sky, I'm sure you're well aware of, has finally got a release date. Okay. Well, not a release date, a release month. It's supposed to be June of next year. We talked about this a little off camera. That doesn't always mean it's actually going to hit that date, but with the amount of hype and the amount of build, I think it needs to.
So, if people don't know, we're talking about video games right now.
Yes, we've moved on to video games for a second.
And Sony held a press conference in Paris and they revealed some stuff. So No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky
is a pretty ambitious looking game.
Yeah, the whole idea is that you're trying to travel further and further into the center of the universe, and thousands and thousands of planets are out there for you to explore that have never been explored, that are kind of, they're like generated without the developer kind of came with an algorithm to sort of generate these worlds, and they're all undiscovered. And so the idea is that all of these different people, and it's all going to be connected online, are sort of journeying across space to get to the center of the universe, which is, they showed kind of a chunk of it, and they started off on a planet, and they backed out, and they backed out, and this game is going to be massive. If it works the way it's supposed to work, it's going to be massive. Right. And they've been hyping it for
basically limitless planet exploration.
Yeah. And then you can go and you can colonize and name planets that you've discovered for the first time, and they haven't, from what I've seen, gotten too much into the moment-to-moment gameplay of it. They've just sort of been like, oh, you can travel to undiscovered planets, you can have space battles, you can harvest animal creatures that are on these planets, all kinds of stuff. But it's been building for a few years now. They've been talking about this, 2 or 3 E3s probably. I think it was one of the Game Awards that they announced it. I don't remember, but that finally got a release date for a release month of June 2016. So if that's something you're looking for, that's definitely a month to remember. They showed some more footage for Horizon Zero Dawn. Are you familiar with this one from E3? If you guys aren't familiar, it takes place in the future where civilization has crumbled, and basically people are kind of back to a tribal state and dealing with kind of the remnants of the technology we've left behind. So they officially aren't dinosaurs, but these giant animal robot things are kind of walking the earth, and you harvest them for certain resources. It's supposed to be hugely open world, action RPG elements, so they showed a little bit more of that. It's I can't remember the protagonist's name, but she's taking down this giant Tyrannosaurus monster. We saw they showed this for Paris Games Week was the behind closed doors demo they showed at E3. So it was a little bit more than what we saw at E3, but the same kind of chunk of gameplay. That was a big one. They showed a lot of VR. I think this was Sony's time to really, they needed this to kind of show some VR stuff.
VR's coming.
Yeah, if you guys didn't know, Sony's working on a new VR headset similar to Oculus. For a while it was Morpheus. If you've heard of Morpheus being discussed, that's what it was. They've shown some games for that. One of the big ones they announced was Until Dawn Rush of Blood. You played a little bit of Until Dawn.
Yeah, I'll be talking about it later this week.
So this Rush of Blood is kind of like an on-the-rails, like almost like you're in a minecart, and you're just kind of riding through, and you can shoot at things and do stuff. I just saw a couple glimpses of it through like their sizzle reel and stuff at the end. So that's a big one. Crytek, if you know who they are, they're working on a new game called Robinson the Journey. They did the Crysis games a little while back. This looks interesting. I'm not quite sure what to make of it. You're kind of on this planet. It starts off the trailer, you don't really know where you are. And this little robot orb comes down, kind of reminds me of the ghost from Destiny, comes down and is like, oh, do you want to play a game? Like, and then you're like, yeah. And then you see like these dinosaurs start riding by. He's like, avoid getting stomped. And so he's kind of guiding you through these herds of dinosaurs and stuff that you try to don't get stomped, and you come up and one of the brontosaurus, the big long brontosaurus, collapses, and this T-Rex comes out and like gnaws at it and looks up at you. He's like, we're gonna play one more game, and then it like cuts to the title screen. So could be interesting. I don't know.
Any word on price yet of the VR?
No, nothing that I saw on price. The other one that was interesting that I wanted to mention, they're doing like something for the Walk, for Robert Zemeckis' The Walk. I don't know if it's a full-fledged game or if it's just kind of a tech demo that you can try out.
Up there.
Yeah, it shows like this woman, or from his perspective, walking on the tightrope across the Twin Towers, and then it cuts out to a woman like taking the headset off and like.
Did you see that movie?
I have not seen that movie.
I literally forgot that movie came out, and it was 2 weeks ago.
So those are kind of the big things. If you're into fighting games, they announced Street Fighter V getting a release date finally for February 16th. Tekken 7's also was announced. They showed the Ratchet & Clank trailer for the new PS4 remaster or remake, whatever it ends up being. It looks really good. I'm really impressed with how that's turning out. And if you're into car games, they also announced Gran Turismo Sport. Yeah, I mean, I'm not big into it. Some people are. I'm kind of surprised it didn't end up being something that's going to be compatible with PlayStation VR. That's sort of about where my thing cut off, so maybe they made an announcement, maybe they didn't. And then I know one of the things that was announced that I didn't see yet is a new game from the creator of Beyond Good and Evil and Rayman called Wild, and it's kind of, from what I've been reading, it's sort of another like some kind of prehistoric type game where you're some sort of shaman and can.
It's like the big thing right now. Prehistoric.
Yeah, we have that. We got the Far Cry Primal and Horizon Zero Dawn. But from what I saw, those are kind of the big points. Anything that you've seen from that you want to mention? Because I know you've read a little bit about stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you hit some of the big ones. VR is, it's cool that they're showing off some real gameplay now. Mm-hmm. As best as they can. It's a hard thing to show off at the conference.
There's a lot of shots in the trailer of people with VR helmets, but it's like see-through VR, so they're just like.
It's exciting, right?
Yeah, they showed a lot of the rigs demo, which is kind of a multiplayer.
I think that VR is really going to prove to be that we're talking about virtual reality.
Yeah.
Wear a helmet on your head and they fully immersive. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be the kind of thing that, like, with the Wii, the original Wii, it was like, yeah, you can watch all you want, people swinging it around and pretending it's a golf club, but until you really do it, you don't
get it.
And
that's going to be their big thing, is getting it in the hands of people to prove that this is, yes, you want. And, a lot of reports and stuff from people in the industry that I've been reading, they're like, oh yeah, I didn't really know what to think about it, and then I tried it, and I was like, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be kind of a difficult thing to do here. Is really prove to people.
I think that there's definitely potential in VR. I think it could be really fun. I think it's going to be really expensive, at least to begin.
Yeah.
But I hope that it never becomes all that video games are.
I agree.
But we'll see.
Yeah, see what happens.
So, check out more on that. Maybe if some other stuff comes out, happens too, we'll talk about it in a future episode. Alright, fourth news story of the week. Disney announced, or it came out this week, that they are developing a movie out of the Tower of Terror attraction. There has previously been a made-for-TV version.
It was the Steve Guttenberg one.
Steve Guttenberg, Kirsten Dunst. But they're going to redo it, give it the big screen treatment. If you've never been to Disney World, haven't heard of the ride, there's a ride called Tower of Terror. The ride itself, it takes place it's like a Twilight Zone ride. It takes place in the Twilight Zone. It's like a lost episode. And they have it at Disney World. It's at Disneyland. It's in Paris, Disney. And it's going to, I think, Beijing or one of their other Asian country Disneys. So, question is for you first. Do you want to see a Tower of Terror movie done on the big screen?
Depends who does it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned, the whole thing's sort of, it's supposed to be a Twilight Zone kind of lost episode, and the whole thing started with Rod Serling.
And one thing I should quickly, I don't know if you know this,
I haven't read anything about.
This will have nothing to do with the Twilight Zone.
Okay.
The movie. It's not going to have ties. The rights to anything Twilight Zone and feature film are at Warner Brothers.
Gotcha.
Who is still developing one now with, most recently, it was going to be Matthew Reeves, who did Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. He's doing Battle of the Planet of the Apes. And now the guy developing Twilight Zone for Warner Brothers is Joseph Kosinski, the guy who did Tron, Legacy, and Oblivion.
Okay.
So, do you want to see the movie without it even being Twilight Zone?
Depends on what they. I mean, I don't know. They haven't announced like who's behind it, who's doing anything.
Just that they're.
I think it just kind of depends. I mean, I would be interested in it. I would have been more interested to see it from a Twilight Zone. I mean, which they could still do a Twilight Zone type thing, obviously without it being the Twilight Zone. But it just depends on what they do. If it's, I don't know, how much can you stretch out the same thing again of people in an elevator, they crash and there's ghosts and.
I think a creepy movie in a hotel, but on a big scale, family friendly, could be fun.
Yeah. Like The Shining for kids.
Yeah, I think that Disney has a history of turning their attractions into movies now with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies successfully, in my opinion, for the most part. They've also done like the Country Bears Jamboree, which was a terrible movie. and should never be watched by anyone. They're also developing a Jungle Cruise ride, or movie, I mean, with The Rock. So maybe that'll be fun.
The Rock makes little quips as he travels throughout the...
Yeah, he's going to be funny.
Make all those puns.
Yeah. So we'll see. This is what they do. I think if I was to just off the top of my head think of what Disney attraction could potentially make a great movie, that would be one of them.
Yeah.
But I would worry, like I worried, when they made the Haunted Mansion movie, there was something in the contract of Eddie Murphy that if that movie had made like $85 million, Eddie Murphy would have had to go into the Haunted Mansion attraction. Luckily, that movie bombed. But if this movie does well and they drop the Twilight Zone out of the Tower of Terror attraction, I would be disappointed.
Yeah, that's half the fun, is the whole
absolutely
Twilight Zone stuff.
So, and you could totally see that happening. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If the movie's a hit, they will do that. It's not even a question. So that would be disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it could be cool. Is there any other, gun to your head right now, you have to choose another Disney attraction to turn into a movie?
Shit. Great Movie Ride's already based on movies. But
although a movie where they go into classic movies,
that could be fun.
Would be fun, I think.
Yeah.
That's
gonna be my pick.
Choice.
Great Movie
Ride. The Great Movie Ride, the movie.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then you can have the Great Movie Ride, the movie, the ride.
I still, I've been to Hollywood Studios about 10 times since they updated that ride with the Turner Classic Movies with Robert Osborne doing the narration now. Haven't gone to that yet.
I haven't been back since they've...
I'm excited to check that out. Alright, so if there's a Disney ride that you want to see become a movie, what would it be? Alright, last news story of the week. We got some word within the last couple of weeks revolving around DC's superhero slate.
Okay.
A couple quick hits, just get your opinions on. Ben Affleck, in a recent interview with Total Film, made some comments about how he thinks that directing a solo Batman film would be a dream, but the screenplay would have to be right and the story would have to be there for him to do it. So when I read that, that's almost me saying, to me that's like him saying, if I'm not directing the Batman movie's going to suck. Because he's going to be in that movie one way or another, and that movie's going to happen, and if he doesn't direct it, doesn't that make it sound like the screenplay sucks? But the weird thing is, he's the one co-writing the screenplay. So, why would it even get made unless it was in the right place? So it's also like him saying he's going to direct Batman.
Well, I remember, you brought this to me up, a few days ago, and I thought that I thought that was already set that he was going to direct Batman. But I mean, maybe that could also be his way of being like, well, if I'm directing it, that means it's going to be the screenplay's solid. And so when I announce I'm directing it, you can trust that I believe in the screenplay and it's not just a hired person to here, pump out the Batman screenplay and we're gonna have Ben Affleck direct it. And
I don't know about you, for myself, I'm in favor of him directing it. I think
he's
absolutely more than proven himself. The way that he was able to, in specifically Gone Baby Gone and The Town, his Boston movies, make Boston as itself a city feel like a real character in it. It would be interesting to see if he did a similar approach to Gotham. That would be very cool. I just think that he's a great director, honestly. I think it would be really awesome if he did it. Minor note on Affleck, it came out today that his next directorial effort, Live by Night, which is an adaptation of a Dennis Lehane book, started filming today.
Oh, cool.
So that's cool. He's actually making another movie. It was unclear if he was going to be able to fit that in, and it's shooting. So
great.
There we go. But the other bit of DC news as part of this story, it came out within the last few days anyway, that the reported budget for BVS, Dawn of Justice, is $410 million, which apparently ties it with the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean. Which, first of all, I don't understand how that movie cost that much. For those who aren't in the know, The Avengers, as an example, was a really, really expensive movie, and it had a $220 million budget. 400 is unheard of.
That's ridiculous.
And then they're saying that, so what's Justice League gonna cost? That doesn't even include the marketing dollars. If that movie doesn't make $1 billion, it's going to be.
I mean, they're really
It's going to be at a
banging
loss
on this movie.
And do I think there's any chance that Batman vs Superman flops? No. No. Worldwide, it's gonna make its money, but like, this sets such a dangerous precedent.
Mm.
Like at that point, like there are other minor movies, like they're making a Cyborg movie and they're making an Aquaman movie. Like even if those have half of the budget of Batman vs Superman, that's still $200 million. Like, what are they doing?
I'm afraid to see if it's gonna stay within kind of the DC house, or if it's gonna start to trickle out
To
other movies, to other studios. It's like, well, they put $400 million into their movie.
Yeah.
We got to start pumping money into this one too.
The rumor in the same article, and I think this originally came out of the Wall Street Journal, and then it was reported by other sites, is that also Infinity War, the next actual Avengers movies, Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2, together are going to be $1 billion. With 400
Say that one more time? $1
billion with
Okay.
a B. And with 400 million just going to the cast and crew. So, again, you have to assume you spend $1 billion for 2 Avengers movies that are probably going to have the Avengers and new Avengers and characters we haven't seen yet, and Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's 2 movies, and both of them will probably make over $1 billion. So they're going to make that money back, but like we are hitting this point where if some of these minor movies, like I said, like Aquaman, like Cyborg, like Doctor Strange, like Black Panther, if they start being $250 million movies, one of them has a serious chance of bombing.
That's it.
And as soon as one bombs, it doesn't kill Disney, but it would really, really hurt Warner Brothers, who's doing the DC movies. Like Warner Brothers hasn't had a hit in a while. They just had Pan is going to be like a $175 million write-off. It's gonna start to catch up. We're definitely gonna see.
It's got to burst at some point.
And this is what Steven Spielberg was talking about when he made those comments. We never talked about it on our show, but people saw it. He said eventually the superhero bubble is gonna bust. Everything
This is
the trend. One of these movies will bomb at some point, and it's gonna really shake things up if they keep going in this direction. Massive prices.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Disney will be fine though. A Marvel movie could literally make no money.
Yeah.
And they could lose. Like I mean, look at Disney as an example. They had The Lone Ranger lost like $200 million. John Carter then months later lost it, and look where they're at.
Yeah,
they're fine.
They got Star Wars now. They
got Star Wars. They got Marvel.
They're just sitting there with their cash, just hanging out.
Bob Iger's just Uncle Scrooge. But anyway, interesting that movie is so much. Right?
That's ridiculous.
It's insane. All right, so that's our news for the week.
All right.
So let us know what you thought of that news. What news did we miss this week? Let us know.
Yeah.
And we'll be back next week with another Top 5.
Yeah. Let us know what you thought of everything. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at Rich Belson.
I'm at Stonks.
The channel's at OABeer_official. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/overbeer. If you want to email us, you can find us at overbeerofficial@gmail.com. Like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to our pages. Leave comments, anything you thought, anything you think we should be covering that we're not. That'll wrap it up.
That's it.
Great.
See you later.
See you.